Modern Greek refers to the dialects and varieties of the Greek language spoken in the modern era. The beginning of the modern period of the language is often symbolically assigned to the fall of the Byzantine Empire in 1453, even though that date marks no clear linguistic boundary and many characteristic modern features of the language arose centuries earlier, between the 4th and the 15th century AD. During most of the period, the language existed in a situation of diglossia, with regional spoken dialects existing side by side with learned, more archaic written forms, as with the demotic and learned varieties that coexisted throughout much of the 19th and 20th centuries. Varieties. Varieties of modern Greek include demotic, Demotic Greek. Strictly speaking, demotic refers to all popular varieties of modern Greek which followed a common evolution path from Koine and have retained a high degree of mutual intelligibility to the present day. As shown in Ptochoprodromic and acritic poems, Demotic Greek was already before the 11th century the vernacular, Roman language of the Byzantine Greeks, notably in peninsular Greece, the Greek islands, coastal Asia Minor, Constantinople and Cyprus. Today, a standardized variety of Demotic Greek is the official language of the Hellenic Republic and Cyprus, and is referred to as the Standard Modern Greek, or less strictly simply as Modern Greek, or Demotic. Demotic Greek comprises various regional varieties with minor linguistic differences, mainly in phonology and vocabulary. Due to their high degree of mutual intelligibility, Greek linguists refer to those varieties as idioms of a wider Demotic dialect, known as Koine Modern Greek. Most English-speaking linguistics tend to refer to them as dialects, emphasizing degrees of variation only when necessary. Demotic Greek varieties are divided into two main groups, Northern and Southern. The main distinguishing feature common to Northern variants is a set of standard phonological shifts in unaccented vowel phonemes, o, becomes, u, e, becomes, I, and u, are dropped. The dropped vowel's existence is implicit, and may affect surrounding phonemes, for example, a dropped I palatalizes preceding consonants, just like an I that is pronounced. Southern variants do not exhibit these phonological shifts. Examples of Northern dialects are Rumelian, Epirote, Thessalian, Macedonian, Thracian. The Southern category is divided into groups that include variety groups from Megara, Aegina, Athens, Siam and Mani Peninsula, Peloponnese, Cyclades and Crete, Ionian Islands, Northern Epirus, Smyrna and Constantinople, Dodecanese and Cyprus. Demotic Greek has officially been taught in monotonic Greek script since 1982. Polytonic script remains popular in intellectual circles. Katharavousa, a semi-artificial sociolect promoted in the 19th century at the foundation of the modern Greek state, as a compromise between classical Greek and modern Demotic. It was the official language of modern Greece until 1976. Katharavousa is written in polytonic Greek script. Also, while Demotic Greek contains loanwords from Turkish, Italian, Latin, and other languages, these have for the most part been purged from Katharavousa. See also Greek language question. Pontic. Pontic, originally spoken along the mountainous Black Sea coast of Turkey, the so-called Pontus region, until most of his speakers were killed or displaced to modern Greece during the Pontic genocide, followed later by the population exchange between Greece and Turkey in 1923. It hails from Hellenistic and medieval Koine and preserves characteristics of Ionic due to ancient colonizations of the region. Pontic evolved as a separate dialect from Demotic Greek as a result of the region's isolation from the Greek mainstream after the Fourth Crusade fragmented the Byzantine Empire into separate kingdoms. Cappadocian, a Greek dialect of central Turkey of the same fate as Pontic. Its speakers settled in mainland Greece after the Greek genocide and the later population exchange between Greece and Turkey in 1923. Cappadocian Greek diverged from the other Byzantine Greek dialects earlier, beginning with the Turkish conquests of Central Asia Minor in the 11th and 12th centuries, and so developed several radical features, such as the loss of the gender for nouns. Having been isolated from the Crusader conquests and the later Venetian influence of the Greek coast, It retained the ancient Greek terms for many words that were replaced with Romance ones in Demotic Greek. The poet Rumi, whose name means Roman, referring to his residence amongst the Roman Greek speakers of Cappadocia, wrote a few poems in Cappadocian Greek, one of the earliest attestations of the dialect. Mariupolitan, Ρωμαίικα or Mariupolitan Greek is a dialect spoken in about 17 villages around the northern coast of the Sea of Azov in southern Ukraine and Russia. Mariupolitan Greek is closely related to Pontic Greek and evolved from the dialect of Greek spoken in Crimea, which was a part of the Byzantine Empire and then the Pontic Empire of Trebizond, until that latter state fell to the Ottomans in 1461. Thereafter, the Crimean Greek state continued to exist as the independent Greek Principality of Theodoro. The Greek-speaking inhabitants of Crimea were invited by Catherine the Great to resettle in the new city of Mariupol after the Russo-Turkish War to escape the then Muslim-dominated Crimea. Mariupolitan's main features have certain similarities with both Pontic and the northern varieties of the core dialects. Southern Italian. Southern Italian or Italiote, comprising both Calabrian and Greco varieties, it is spoken by around 15 villages in the regions of Calabria and Apulia. The Southern Italian dialect is the last living trace of Hellenic elements in southern Italy that once formed Magna Graecia. Its origins can be traced to the Dorian Greek settlers who colonized the area from Sparta and Corinth in 700 BC. It has received significant Koine Greek influence through Byzantine Greek colonizers who reintroduced Greek language to the region, starting with Justinian's conquest of Italy in late antiquity and continuing through the Middle Ages. Greco and Demotic are mutually intelligible to some extent, but the former shares some common characteristics with Tsakonian. Yevanic, a recently extinct language of Romanian Jews. The language was already in decline for centuries until most of his speakers were killed in the Holocaust. Afterward, the language was mostly kept by remaining Romanian emigrants to Israel, where it was displaced by modern Hebrew. Tsakonian, spoken in its full form today only in a small number of villages around the town of Leonidion in the region of Arcadia in the southern Peloponnese, and partially spoken further afield in the area. Tsakonian evolved directly from Laconian and therefore descends from the Doric branch of the Greek language. It has limited input from Hellenistic Koine and is significantly different from and not mutually intelligible with other Greek varieties. Some linguists consider it a separate language because of this. Phonology and writing. A series of radical sound shifts, which the Greek language underwent mainly during the period of Koine, has led to a phonological system in modern Greek that is significantly different from that of ancient Greek. Instead of the rich vowel system of ancient Greek, with its 4 vowel height levels, length distinction, and multiple diphthongs, modern Greek has a simple system of 5 vowels. This came about through a series of mergers, especially towards. In the consonants, modern Greek has voiced and voiceless affricatives in lieu of the ancient Greek voiced and aspirated voiceless plosives. Modern Greek has not preserved length distinction either in vowels or in consonants. Modern Greek is written in the Greek alphabet, which has 24 letters, each with a capital and lowercase form. The letter sigma additionally has a special final form. There are 2 diacritical symbols, the acute accent which indicates stress and the diaeresis marking a vowel letter as not being part of a digraph. Greek has a mixed historical and phonemic orthography, where historical spellings are used if their pronunciation matches modern usage. The correspondence between consonant phonemes and graphemes is largely unique, but several of the vowels can be spelled in multiple ways. Thus reading is easy but spelling is difficult. A number of diacritical signs were used until 1982, when they were officially dropped from Greek spelling as no longer corresponding to the modern pronunciation of the language. Monotonic orthography is today used in official usage, in schools and for most purposes of everyday writing in Greece. Polytonic orthography, besides being used for older varieties of Greek, is still used in book printing, especially for academic and belletristic purposes, and in everyday use by some conservative writers and elderly people. The Greek Orthodox Church continues to use polytonic, and the late Archbishop Christodoulos of Athens and the Holy Synod of the Church of Greece have requested the reintroduction of polytonic as the official script. The Greek vowel letters with their pronunciation are, IB plus or minus I copyright, IB micron I copyright, IB I copyright, IB to the first I copyright, IB I copyright, IC I copyright, IC permil I copyright. There are also vowel digraphs which are phonetically monophthongal, IB plus or minus I to the first I copyright, IB micron I to the first I copyright, IBI to the first I copyright, IBII copyright, ICI to the first I copyright. The three digraphs IB plus or minus II copyright, IB micron II copyright and IBII copyright are pronounced, but before voiceless consonants they are pronounced, of, f and, if, respectively. The Greek letters IB squared I copyright and IBI copyright are pronounced and respectively. The letter IB cubed I copyright is generally pronounced, but before the mid or close front vowels, it is pronounced, e. IOR over, before the mid or close back vowels, tends to be pronounced further back than a prototypical velar, between a velar, e pound and an uvular, e. The letters IBI copyright, ICI copyright and ICI copyright are pronounced, and respectively. The letter ICI copyright, before mid or close front vowels, is pronounced, a section, and before the mid or close back vowels, it tends to be pronounced as a psphila, xi plus or minus. The letter IB 3/4 I copyright stands for the sequence and ICI copyright for. The digraphs IB cubed I copyright and IB cubed II copyright are generally pronounced, e, in everyday speech, but are pronounced, I before the front vowels and tend to be pronounced, e pound before the back and. When these digraphs are preceded by a vowel, they are pronounced, angstrom e, in formal speech. The digraph IB cubed I copyright may be pronounced, angstrom e pound in some words. The pronunciation, angstrom k, for the digraph IB cubed I copyright is extremely rare, but could be heard in literary and scholarly words or when reading ancient texts. Normally it retains its original pronunciation, angstrom k, only in the trigraph IB cubed I copyright where ICI copyright prevents the sonorization of IBI copyright by IB cubed I copyright. Grammar. Modern Greek is largely a synthetic language. It is one of only two Indo-European languages that has retained a synthetic passive, the other being Albanian. Grammatical shift from Classical Greek. Noticeable changes in grammar include, the loss of, the dative case, the optative mood, the infinitive, the dual number, the participles. The adoption of the gerund. The reduction in the number of noun declensions, and the number of distinct forms in each declension. The adoption of the modal particle II plus or minus to denote future and conditional tenses. The introduction of auxiliary verb forms for certain tenses. The extension to the future tense of the aspectual distinction between present imperfect and aorist. The loss of the third-person imperative. The simplification of the system of grammatical prefixes, such as augmentation and reduplication. Most of these features are shared with other languages spoken in the Balkan Peninsula, although Greek does not show all typical Balkan areal features, such as the postposed article. Because of the influence of Cathara-Vusa, however, demotic is not commonly used in its purest form. Archaisms are still widely used, especially in writing and in more formal speech, as well as in some everyday expressions, such as the dative I micron I 1/2 I 3/4 I micron I to the first or the third person imperative I paragraph I registered trademark I per mil. Sample text. The following is a sample text in modern Greek of the Article 1 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. I1, I to the first I to the first I 1/2 I per mil I euro I to the first I cubed I micron I 1/2 I to the first I 1/2 I plus or minus I to the first I micron I micron I micron I to the first I plus or minus I to the first I florin I to the first I florin I 1/2 I. plus or minus I 3/4 I to the first I euro I micron I to the first I plus or minus I plus or minus I to the first I plus or minus I to the first I plus or minus I to the first I 1/4 I plus or minus I plus or minus I 1/2 I plus or minus I to the first I euro I to the first I to the first I florin I 1/4 I 1/2 I to the first I 1/4 I micron I cubed I to the first I registered trademark I plus or minus I to the first I florin I 1/2 I micron I florin I plus or minus I to the first I micron I 1/2 I 1/2 I plus or minus I florin I 1/4 I euro I micron I to the first I 1/2 I plus or minus I to the first I 1/4 I micron I plus or minus I 3/4 I 1/4 I micron I euro I 1/2 I micron I 1/4 I plus or minus I micron I florin I 1/2 I Arthro 1. Oloi anthropoi geniointai elitheroi swastin axiopropua kai tardikiometer. Anai proacusmanoi milogi kai sinodisi, kai ophialu and nasim peripherantai mutaxi tois mifnima adlafasinis. RTHRO1, alii anthropia ndee la copyright 3k assistin axia pro copyright pk tardikia cubed marta. Ani prakizma copyright ni miloika k shina dc, k offerlan na simbarifa copyright rond metixitasmif na copyright vma ad helfosinis. Ere ruina euro eolia nairobi squared under a leafy se stinaxi prepius etana degree amato euro ni prices many milo se nia degree se a filon na simbrifer and mutixitus me ifnivma or degree elfosnis. Article 1, all the human beings are born free and equal in the dignity and the rights. Are endowed with reason and conscience, and have to behave between them with spirit of brotherhood. Article 1, all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. They are endowed with reason and conscience and should act towards one another in a spirit of brotherhood. References. Further reading. External links, Portal for the Greek Language. Hellenic National Corpus of the Institute for Language and Speech Processing, ILSP Psycholinguistic Resource, Audio Example of Modern Greek, Courses, Online Course for Loglossia by ILSP, Greek Online Course Greek by Radio from Cyprus Radio Broadcasting CYBC in English, 105 lessons with real audio files, dictionaries and glossaries, Gráica Euro-English Dictionary Georgicas for Modern Greek Literature, Triantaphilids Dictionary for Modern Greek, English Glossary, English Euro-Greek Dictionary, Grammar, Illustrated Modern Greek Grammar,